Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, January 25th, 2019. Hey, happy birthday to my dad. Happy birthday, Dad. Not listening, I don't think. Probably on his way to work anyway. I'll give you a call later on. Don't worry about that. Good way of celebrating anybody's day, birthday or otherwise. Roger Stone has been arrested, and we are admonished, of course, to remember that everyone, all criminal defendants in this country are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, except as we are aptly reminded, and this certainly came to mind for me as well, so I'm glad Armando took care of business on this one. It was Empty Wheel, Marcy Wheeler reminding us all, very kindly, please remember that Roger Stone, like all people charged with crime in the United States, is innocent until proven guilty. If we don't adhere to that standard for well-connected S-holes, not A-holes, but S-holes, it won't be there for us when we need it. Of course, I disagree that it'll ever be there for us, whatever us means, when we need it. There is no consideration sufficient to freeze the other side in place to consider that it might be wise to honor that promise in good faith. But Armando also reminds us, if you're an officer of the court, fine. If you're on the jury, no problem. That's what you should be thinking. As for the rest of you, you are free to say that Roger Stone is absolutely, positively guilty and ought to be executed. Go ahead and say it. It's all right. It happens all the time. Don't worry about it. It won't affect the jury proceedings anyhow. And you can do so free of any guilt. But absolutely true. That's for the jury, not for the rest of us. And come on. Of course he's guilty. Now, if I were to be asked to serve on the jury, I would probably be disqualified. But would I say in voir dire, if you will, if I were actually in that position, that I would be capable of considering him to be innocent until proven guilty? I'd say I'm intellectually capable. I'm unwilling, but I am intellectually capable of doing so. They would probably dismiss me based on that answer, but that would be the honest answer. Could I do it? Could I imagine it? Absolutely. Can I play the contrarian, devil's advocate for Roger Stone? I could. Not the way I want to spend my day, but I could do it. All right, well, let's see. Lots of other things to catch up on, believe it or not, although there's lots to mine from out of the indictment against Roger Stone, and I suppose we should pay some attention to catching up on that and finding out what else is going on. Sarah Sanders has been out front already denying that this has anything to do with the White House, the president in any way, shape, or form. I think the quote that's being circulated, the question, let's see. This is the second of her quotes. The first was simply denying that it had anything to do with President Trump and or the White House, and that's ridiculous. Second quote, I guess, being circulated, the question and the big thing the Mueller investigation is supposed to center on is whether or not the president colluded with Russia, and the answer is no. Michael Cohen, speech boy, not the Michael Cohen 212 from the Trump campaign, says, yeah, she should read the indictment, and that'll kind of straighten things out. Of course, let's see, Betsy Woodruff had an interesting tweet earlier today. I guess I got to open all of these things to make sure I have them available to share with the rest of you who might be listening along later on. Betsy Woodruff, Daily Beast reporter, says, last night Stone texted me this CNN story, which pointed out that he had not been indicted. But once again, that is just another episode of How to Read a Trumpster Comment. Poof! He's now been indicted and, in fact, arrested. The details of the arrest are available to you if you have a television or a computer and can play video taken by CNN on the spot for the pre-dawn FBI raid of his house in, I think, Palm Beach or the near environs of Palm Beach, Florida. And apparently, yeah, I guess I should look this one up too. I'll have to scroll back and see if I can find it. But what's her name? Greta Van Susteren. Yeah, how am I going to find that tweet? I'll look around for her tweet. She was playing conspiracy theorist, I guess, this morning. And it's, if you're really completely uninformed of what's going on. It's not a terrible question. Let's see. She said, where is it? Was this what she did? Where's the original one? Indictment. Nothing wrong. Here we go. I don't know. I'm not certain where this begins. I guess she's been ranting on it for some time. She's admitted that she's wrong here. I gotta go through an awful lot of tweets here. No, still not done. Wow, she's been on this for quite a while. Anyway, the upshot of it is that she was complaining that the fact that CNN was on scene for the raid means that they were tipped off to it by somebody. Let's see. Weird that Roger Stone, is this the original one? Weird that Roger Stone arrested in FBI raid early this morning rather than surrender with a lawyer at the FBI office. Did they think that he would flee? Oh no, that's not even it either. But she's basically saying she wanted to know, how did CNN know to be there to film the arrest? CNN cameras were at the raid of Roger Stone. So FBI obviously tipped off CNN. Even if you don't like Stone, it is curious why Mueller's office tipped off CNN instead of trying to quietly arrest Stone. Quiet arrests are more likely to be safe to the FBI and the person arrested. So it was pretty quickly pointed out to her by many people that apparently CNN hanging out at the courthouse yesterday. There was some very unusual activity apparently at the courthouse yesterday, and they were there to see what was going on. They're always staking out the courthouse. Roger Stone's been under threat of indictment and arrest for some time now. He and Donald Trump Jr. and Jerome Corsi, who's also not named but referred to apparently by one of the person one, person two, whatever in the indictment. But apparently fitting the description of Jerome Corsi. All three of them have been tweeting regularly at the end of every week that they expect to be indicted and or arrested at any moment. So, no surprise, obviously. And I guess hanging out at the courtroom, they figured it out. And when the indictments were, I don't know whether they were announced or anything, but I guess they were able to glean from the activity in the courtroom that this was likely going to result in an arrest, and it was probably going to be Roger Stone. There's very few people that it probably would be at this point, so they staked it out. And they got it, and guess what? Greta Van Susteren thinks, she's out there blabbing that it's obvious that the FBI tipped off CNN, which of course I'm sure set off a number of fires in the conservative Twitter sphere, blogosphere, whatever, if they're two separate spheres, I don't know. And they're bemoaning the corruption, I am sure, 2 hours later, after Greta Van Susteren had been corrected and basically has admitted, I spoke out of turn here. I don't know. I really have no idea. Oh, and by the way, somebody else actually said, is it possible that Stone knew that they were coming and called CNN? And she says, I hadn't thought of that, but Stone is an unusual man, so perhaps you're right, but I have no idea. So it's interesting. Then the next one was, her next tweet is about the Stone arrest. Before you get more information and facts, I would suggest you don't jump to conclusions or take sides. Facts make a difference. But of course, that didn't stop her in the morning. It wouldn't have stopped me either, to be honest. I love to scream about that kind of thing. Also, I'm thrilled that Roger Stone has been arrested. It's terrific news. Couldn't enjoy it more. What has Armando sent me here? Rudy Giuliani used to walk people off the trading floor after calling the media. Yes, prosecutors would do that all the time. Giuliani, you could see doing that. You did see doing that. And Mueller, not so much. I doubt that he tipped anybody off, but it wouldn't be beyond Stone doing it. So that's pretty interesting. By the way, it occurred to me today that Charlie Black is the only one of the original three partners in that consulting firm who's not in jail at the moment. I imagine, I guess Roger Stone gets out later today, but he's in jail now, I would think, unless he's sitting in an FBI office and on his way to jail. But Manafort, Stone, and Kelly, that was like the original three political consulting team on Reagan's campaign, and they all, I think, knew one another from Nixon's campaign, obviously. But they later added a couple other names, and they switched the lineup a little bit. But of those three, only Charlie Black still not arrested. He decided to work for John Kasich in the 2016 campaign, so wise choice. That'll probably keep you out of jail for the next couple of weeks. I don't think there's anything that anybody's going to get arrested for from the Kasich campaign. Not that you couldn't find dirt, it's just that who would bother, I guess. All right, let's see. We're done with Greta Van Susteren. Let's see, I need to return to my own tweet stream so I can remember what did I want to talk to you guys about earlier. Let's see. I have to do some clicking. Let's see. There's also plenty of stuff in Pocket. Man, I think I'm losing my voice today. It's a good time for the weekend to come up. I'm happy for the break that's coming. One of my kids brought something home that's likely going to rob me of my voice over the weekend. Hopefully be okay for Monday. Let's see. Which direction do we want to go in? Oh, big news on the confectionery front. I bet you didn't expect that. I found out this morning. Let's see, who tweeted this one around? I've pushed the wrong button once again. The cold is infecting my brain, apparently. Let's see. So this year, there will be none of those little candy hearts for Valentine's Day, which is saddening. Here we are. And how do we say your name, by the way? Med Editor. But a frequent Twitter correspondent during the day, pointing out the story that the New York Post has, those little candy hearts that say, be mine, or kiss me, or grope me, or whatever they say these days now, grab me, however it is done these days, won't be out this year for Valentine's Day, so a terrible, terrible tradition will be disrupted. His comment on the thing, by the way, is if you can't find these sweethearts, as they call them, to give this Valentine's Day, try out some blobs of toothpaste instead. They'll do just as well. Those were a funny tasting little thing, and I can't believe that they survived as long as they did. But for the little stupid messages, I suppose their time had come and gone. But in case you were wondering why you couldn't find them on the shelves in October, when they first start putting them out there, they clean out the Halloween candy and put up the, I know they supposedly go to Christmas candy, but that's usually over and done with within a week. And, they do these things way too early. Let's see. This is, there will be no sweethearts for your sweetheart this Valentine's Day. The company behind the tiny conversation candies, which come adorned with sayings such as be mine and cutie pie, went out of business in 2018. Thanks, Trump. They didn't move to Mexico. They just plain old closed up. And its new manufacturer didn't have enough time to churn them out after purchasing the brand in September. So that's how long it takes to make those stupid little things. Necco, Necco, they're, I guess, responsible for the equally terrible Necco wafer, but a generation was apparently raised on that, thinking that was fantastic candy. I don't know why. Sort of tasted like pocket lint, if you ask me, but I don't know. They had a nostalgic value, but they're dead, Necco. And Sweethearts, for now, at least for this year, also going to be missing from the shelves. This reported by, did you know there was such an outlet? Candystore.com. There's something for everyone, I guess, on the internet. According to the website, the sugary morsels were the most popular Valentine's Day candy last year, which is amazing, beating out chocolate heart boxes for the first time ever. I don't know why. After Necco went under in July, that's bad timing for you. Oh my God, we finally beat out chocolate heart boxes for the first time ever. Well, too late. We're out of money. After they went under in July, the Sweethearts brand was purchased by Round Hill Investments and then sold off to the Ohio-based Spangler Candy Company, Egon Spangler's original outfit, I guess. The delicious paranormal candies for all the kids. What? I never heard of them, but they never heard of me. That's fine. Round Hill Investments. You imagine flipping the Nico company, but you really got to have your finger on the pulse of, I don't know what, garbage, I guess. Round Hill Investments. I wonder if that's from Round Hill, Virginia. Interesting way to make some money. I would have done it, right? Why not? Unless they laid off all the Nico workers. I guess that's the only way they would make money with this thing. I'm curious now to look into the history of this flip, but not here. Factory workers there couldn't keep up with the demand, and Spangler had to put the kibosh on this year's Valentine's orders. How interesting is that? Couldn't keep up with the demand for what? In September. Now I'm fascinated, and we might have to spend some time on the history of Nico. There are a lot of manufacturing challenges and unanswered questions at this point. Spangler chairman and CEO Kirk Vashaw said last September after acquiring Nico, "We want to make sure these brands meet consumer expectations when they re-enter the market," he said. Does it say nonsense on it? Yeah, all right. Then I think we're good. Social media users weren't taking too kindly to the news on Wednesday. "The world is really coming to an end," wrote one person on Twitter. "You know it's the darker timeline when candy corn outlives sweethearts." Oh my God. Bill just hit the floor in Portland, Maine. "Bill, wake up. It's going to be okay. Get the smelling salts. He'll be fine." Break some candy corn under his nostrils and wave it around. I think he'll be okay. I think you're the most famous candy corn aficionado I know. Or at least the most famous in your what's the word? How would you say? Aficionado-dom is not clearly the word. Somebody who knows French maybe better than me. Okay. According to Candy Store, Nico produced roughly 100,000 pounds of sweethearts daily. Really? And about 8 billion each year. The full supply of orders is reportedly sold within a 6-week period leading up to Valentine's Day. So that's the answer about how they come to taste the way they do. They make them 100,000 pounds a day, and then they wait. So February 15th, they're making hearts, and they're not going anywhere until next February. Delicious. It took Nico 11 months to produce that many sweethearts, Candy Store reported, and now I can see why the venture capitalists thought they could do better. I'm sure we can print these stupid hearts faster than Nico did. They just didn't know what they were doing. And so now we'll get, I don't know, I guess they'll make them in, I guess in Ohio. How they think they're going to do it better and faster, I don't know. Faster printing, less ink, I don't know. Well, we'll see. The website expects Sweethearts sales to drop by more than 80% as a result of the temporary shutdown. Spangler, however, plans to have the treats back in stores by next year. "We are particularly excited about the Sweethearts brand," he said. "Many people have memories of sorting through their box of Sweethearts to find just the right message to share. I don't. If you do, terrific. Just wait till next year. If there is a next year, I don't know. You never know these days how long we're going to survive in the Trump era." Okay, hard news. And I really think I am going to spend some time offline checking out the history of this thing. I am fascinated by the mechanics of dumb stuff like that just mostly goes unseen by the public because it's boring. But that's why we won't follow up. If I find a fascinating story there, though, I'll update you. All right, let's see. Talking Points memo is up to speed, allegedly, on the arrest of Roger Stone and has a digest of the indictment, although before I dive into theirs, I would like to scroll around and see what we've got on the front page of Daily Kos on it. Mark Sumner. I love to sample the Mark Sumner writings in the morning. Let's take a look at how he covers the events of the day. Donald Trump ally Roger Stone arrested on 7 counts of perjury and obstruction. Illustrated with a particularly stupid-looking photo of Roger Stone. He doesn't look that good in most photos. Looking a little penguinish here, but not in his top hat. So at least we've got that going for us. Let's see. Trump advisor and original Nixon dirty trickster Roger Stone was arrested Friday morning in a pre-dawn raid of his Florida home following a 7-count indictment by the grand jury. The raid was captured on video as CNN was at Stone's home at the moment that agents who were, by the way, working through the shutdown without pay arrived to burst into Stone's residence in a SWAT-style procedure and take the longtime Republican strategist away. The investigative focus on Stone has been clear since the fall of 2018, as both Stone and many of his associates have been pulled in repeatedly to appear either before the special counsel or the grand jury. By the way, the grand jury also running out of money for their daily stipend, thanks to the shutdown. Those of you who were sure that all special counsel activities were covered by the permanent appropriations, we forgot about paying the daily stipend, which doesn't make a great deal of difference in anyone's life, I'm sure. But if you have zero, it's nice to have a couple of bucks. The grand jury stipend is going to run out, and I think they can probably get the grand jury to work without pay. Those guys and the FBI, if you were looking around to verify Donald Trump's statement, which is largely untrue, that there were lots of people who were happy to work without pay because they supported the building of the wall. I found the guys who were happy to work without pay. It's the FBI team that arrested Roger Stone, and maybe the grand jury that indicted him. All right, let's see. Just got to cool down the throat this morning. The investigative focus on Stone has been clear since the fall of 2018, right? He's been before the special counsel and the grand jury several times. An unusual Thursday session of the grand jury, yes, that was what was going on yesterday, that alerted everyone, in which the stepson of Stone associate Jerome Corsi was apparently the only one interviewed, seems to have been the final bit of groundwork before the charges against Stone were filed. The indictment indicates that Stone, who was officially part of the Trump campaign in 2015, remained in communications with multiple members of the campaign throughout the election. As expected, based on previous statements, the focus is on Stone's communications with Organization 1. Organization 1, ladies and gentlemen. Keep an eye out for those folks. Let's see. Why don't I have that? I was looking for my dramatic music, but never mind. You get the idea. Organization 1, by the way, clearly is WikiLeaks, and his coordination between WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign also of great interest to the special counsel. A court appearance is scheduled for 11 a.m. Friday. That's today, just as soon as we get off the air. Not because I have to be there, but because that's when they like to do things. All right, let's see. Embedded in the piece here is the tweet from the New Day program on CNN showing David Shortell, I guess is his name, the reporter who was on the ground when Roger Stone was arrested in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, this morning. He says he was monitoring the situation because of, quote, unusual grand jury activity in Washington, D.C. yesterday. So stick it, Greta Susteren. All right. Let's see. There's a little bit more out there, and maybe the Talking Points memo piece ought to be included in this, as I think they dove into the indictment a little further. Allegra Kirkland and Josh Kovensky have the byline on this, and this is a TPM muckraker piece, not a cold AP piece, as far as I can tell here. Longtime Donald Trump, those two do write for TPM, don't they? Longtime Donald Trump associate Roger Stone was arrested in Florida early Friday as part of a special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, the day after a federal grand jury in Washington, D.C. handed down, I have always learned it to be handed up, actually, when it comes to indictments, but okay. That never really made a great deal of sense to most people, and handed down is the way we think of diktats being handed down, but usually the indictments are handed up, I guess, from the jury box to the bench? But anyway, handed down a 7-count indictment against him. Stone is accused of 1 count of obstructing an official proceeding, 5 counts of false statements, and 1 count of witness tampering. So still no indictment about actually what he did on the campaign. This is an indictment about lying about it after the fact. And it may be that that's all that they can ever really put together. Some of the things that some of these people did during the campaign might not necessarily be criminally chargeable, but their lying about it later on certainly is, and it helps unravel all the rest of it, some of which might actually result in direct indictments for actions taken during the campaign. Anyway, the 24-page indictment alleges that Stone engaged in efforts to run interference between WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign about the emails hacked from Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta. The indictment alleges that senior Trump campaign officials contacted Stone to ask about the release of the damaging information. Though the indictment does not name WikiLeaks directly, an entity named Organization One appears to match the group's description. During the summer of 2016, Stone spoke to senior Trump campaign officials about Organization One and information it might have had that would be damaging to the Clinton campaign, the indictment reads. Stone was contacted by senior Trump campaign officials to inquire about future releases by Organization One. The indictment alleges that Stone made false statements to the House Intelligence Committee about his interactions with WikiLeaks, lied to Congress about possessing records that documented those interactions, and attempted to persuade a witness to provide false testimony to investigators. Stone attorney Grant Smith denied his client's culpability in a Friday morning interview with NBC News. He will fight vigorously because, Why? Because there were things he did not recall and were immaterial to the scope of the investigation, Smith told NBC. The indictment details Stone's alleged attempts to gain access to documents that WikiLeaks had in its possession and the people with whom he attempted to communicate to that end. One unnamed individual, Person 1, appears to match the description of well-known conspiracy theorist Jerome Corsi. The indictment describes the person as a political commentator who worked with an online media publication during the 2016 U.S. presidential campaign. Corsi declined to comment to TPM, saying it was too early. Person 2, a radio host, not me, who had known Stone for more than a decade, appears to match the description of New York comedian Randy Credico. We never learned about his last name. The indictment accuses Stone of lying to the House Intelligence Committee by claiming that Credico was the go-between to WikiLeaks. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption, though it's still aimed at saying thank you to all of you who are supporters of the show. We've made a lot of progress. When we first started this campaign, fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners were donating to help keep us on the air, and now that's down to about 1 in 15, but we've got a long way to go. Remember, it won't take much. Our average monthly donation is currently about $7, for which you're getting 2 hours of great news and entertainment 5 days a week. What's that, 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal. But as a wage, well, I think Democrats would be against that. But if we all put our 70 cents together, or even half of us, that'd really be something. And my kids could go to college. Now that's not all on you, but remember, patreon.com, Patreon.com, is there to make it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X, or David Waldman, or Kagro in the Morning, or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right there where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your continuing support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Interesting comment I wanted to take note of, and I'll have to mark this one for later reading, perhaps offline. Anyway, let's continue with TPM's description of what actually was printed in the indictment. I think we ought to be brought up to speed on it. If you haven't caught up to it via Twitter, this is as good a way as any, and just to be sure that I know all the connections that people are talking about, we'll continue. Let's see. So person 1 was Jerome Corsi. Person 2, Randy Credico. If anybody has any clue, I mean, he's a comedian and radio host, so presumably he says his name out loud, or someone does very frequently. I've never heard it, but I'm not too concerned about it. I like to get things right, but if you're indicted, work it out for yourself. From there, the indictment goes into allegations around Stone's contacts with senior Trump campaign officials during the summer of 2016. According to the filing, by June or July of that year, Stone informed senior Trump campaign officials that he had information indicating Organization One, WikiLeaks, had documents whose release would be damaging to the Clinton campaign. In August, Stone claimed in multiple radio and television appearances to be in direct contact with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, saying that he had advanced knowledge of what damaging information would be released. By the time WikiLeaks began releasing the documents on October 7th, 1 month before the election, Stone was claiming credit. And now, of course, I got nothing to do with it. On or about October 7th, 2016, Organization 1, WikiLeaks, released the first set of emails stolen from the Clinton campaign chairman. The indictment reads, shortly after Organization 1's, WikiLeaks, release, an associate of the high-ranking Trump campaign official sent a text message to Stone that read, well done. Now, the indictment does not identify who sent the message. Emails released by the New York Times in 2018 between Stone and Trump campaign chairman Stephen K. Bannon, or as Scott calls him, Stephen K. G.B. Bannon, appear to suggest that Bannon is the unnamed high-ranking campaign official. And we'll give that some dramatic music. Even though, no crap. We know that. Okay. Well, it's nice to see it named this way, even though it's not named. But so TPM has gone ahead and done it. One email string cited in the indictment appears to show Stone telling the unnamed official on October 4th, 2016, that Organization 1, WikiLeaks, would release, quote, a load every week going forward. A person familiar with the situation confirmed to TPM that the unnamed official is Bannon. Prosecutors go on to accuse Stone of lying to the House Intelligence Committee about a range of issues, including the timing and nature of his attempts to contact WikiLeaks. The indictment alleges that Stone lied to the committee about, quote, his possession of documents pertinent to HPSCI's investigation, House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Okay, HPSCI. His possession of documents pertinent to their investigation, lied about that. Lied about the source for his early August 2016 statements about Organization 1, WikiLeaks. Requests he made for information from the head of Organization 1, everybody say it, yes, WikiLeaks. His communications with his identified intermediary and his communications with the Trump campaign about Organization 1. That's a lot of lying. As the investigation heated up, Stone continued to publicly identify Credico, that dude, as the true conduit to WikiLeaks. Behind the scenes, the longtime GOP political operative was allegedly threatening the New York comedian, according to the indictment. How do you like that? He does all the dirty work for him, and then he threatens him. That's why Stone is a disgusting, filthy son of a bitch and belongs in jail because he's guilty, unless I'm in the jury pool, in which case, intellectually, I know that there could be reasonable doubt about his guilt. Stone then allegedly threatened Credico in April of 2018, purportedly calling him in an email, quote, a rat. We heard that before. Donald Trump picked up on that lingo. And a stoolie, the indictment alleges. What an old-timey insult. You backstab your friends, run your mouth, my lawyers are dying, rip you to shreds, Stone purportedly wrote because he doesn't like, articles or conjunctions, I guess. He later added to Credico, we'll go with that one. The indictment reads that he would, quote, take that dog away from you. No idea what's going on. An apparent reference to Credico's dog, Bianca. Oh, so it wasn't the metaphor. Okay. Prosecutors don't cite any more communications until May, when Credico purportedly wrote to Stone, quote, you should have just been honest with the House Intel Committee. You've opened yourself up to perjury charges like an idiot. I guess you're right. Prosecutors say that Stone then replied, you are so full of expletive. And here we are, perjury charges. The special counsel announced that Stone would make an initial appearance at the federal courthouse in Fort Lauderdale at 11 a.m. ET on Friday. Read the full indictment below if you wish, but it's 20-something pages. As they said, not impossible, but it ain't going to happen here. Maybe Armando wants to thumb through it and give us an instant analysis, but I think that's probably sum things up rather nicely. Okay, let's see. What else have I put aside here? Lots of links to people tweeting around the CNN footage of the arrest. Let's see. Oh, yes. Well, I guess we should catch up on the events of yesterday, post-show, I believe, when the entire Trump cabinet apparently decided in unison, there's really only very few of them, to comment to the press about the shutdown and the people who have been going without pay and how they could fix everything. I guess during the show, we already knew about Wilbur Ross and his comments. And I guess there have been some other comments. And then the president tried to, I don't know, clarify / explain away Wilbur Ross's comments, where he basically was saying, just go to the bank and get a bridge loan to see you through the hard. I don't think it hit me immediately exactly how dumb. I mean, it was callous and stupid, but how thoroughly dumb the proposition was. I mean, at first I just sort of thought, here's a rich person who's actually used to getting bridge loans and he just thinks anybody can get them because, a supposed billionaire, and I say supposed billionaire because I saw some interesting stories recirculated yesterday about his wealth. But a guy like him, of course, can walk into a bank and get dumb unsecured loans like that. Or he has plenty of things to offer up as security and turn it into cash. Most people don't really have that. But it didn't strike me immediately on the air what exactly he was saying. You remember he was saying that it was like that. It was like having a federal guarantee, and that you could get a loan based on that. And I was thinking, well, they're federally guaranteed. What is he even talking about? He's talking about like FDIC insurance. That's not applicable to this. And what he means is because legislation has been passed that supposedly guarantees that federal workers will receive back pay when the government shutdown ends, that they should be able to parlay that in discussions with a bank into collateral for a loan or backing for a bridge loan. You say, look, I've got essentially a federal guarantee to pay me the money they owe me. Why don't you lend me that or amount or thereabouts for a short period of time? And then when the shutdown ends, it's federally guaranteed that I'm going to get that cash back and I can turn around and give that cash to you. But if that's your only operating cash, it's not really a feasible position to just say, well, I'm not getting paid now. I'll try and make ends meet without any cash whatsoever. And then what I'll do is I'll take out a loan against that guaranteed cash and incur interest on top of it. All of that cash is spoken for. The minute it comes through from the federal government, it's out the door. These people are late on their bills as it is. Adding a couple points of interest on top of every dollar they have to their name is not a serious business practice. It's just the dumb rantings of people with money to burn. And it's got nothing to do with reality, obviously. Worse than that, of course, is the various statements from Ross and the president and others that all you really need to do is just work with merchants and bankers. Just go and tell them, hey, times are tough. Let's renegotiate the payments. That's, again, something that wealthy people can do when they have other assets, or more specifically, when they owe the banks or suppliers or vendors so much money that it's absolutely critical to them to get some sort of payment, even at a discount, that they'll work with you in order to extract something from you rather than take a total loss. But that's not the way it works for real people, and they just don't understand that, I guess. And then, of course, the totally ludicrous idea that you can go to your neighborhood grocery store and simply say, hey, float me on the groceries for a while because times are tough. It doesn't work like that. And it hasn't really even worked like that for Donald Trump, but he gets out of it by cheating people, and that's a very different sort of practice. Anyway, let's see. Anything else that we want to bring up? Well, here's a comment that I think summed things up nicely. I guess this one a hybrid of or comment on two different situations. One, of course, the various complaints from among the ranks of the rich and conservative about proposals like that made by, among others, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren, etc., surtaxes on the wealthiest among us. Joyanne Reed, commenting, "It's amazing that the same ideological camp who believe that taxing rich people is theft think making working class people work for free in the federal government is volunteerism." That is, of course, how they described it in the Trump administration, that the people are working for free for the federal government without pay because of their spirit of community, their loyalty to President Trump, and their spirit of volunteerism. They're not slaves, they're volunteers. That, of course, probably not really the case and not an accurate description of what was going on. Kevin Cruz, one of our favorite Twitter historians, pointing out, as everyone probably remembers, President George H.W. Bush was savagely mocked because people, wrongly, by the way, he adds, thought he didn't know what a supermarket scanner was. But Trump, thinking you can rack up an IOU at Safeway, is just going to get lost in his fire hose of insanity. That's probably true as well. Let's see, other things to round up. Yes, okay, let's see. We have that story and this one and this one. Boy, there's an awful lot to go through here. Let's see. We'll move eventually over to one of the other big stories of the day involving Jared Kushner. We passed on reading the story of the day about Kushner yesterday, but maybe today's a good day to catch up on where Kushner is. Other interesting stories of the day. Yes, this one was kind of funny. Saw this pointed out on Twitter as well. Let's see if I can identify the sender and give proper credit to the eagle eyes that found it. It's going to take a little bit of scrolling. Matthew Chapman sent this one around. "I'm sorry, this is just way too on the nose," he says, in sending around the story from, in his link, WDRB.com, which is, who knows where they're based. I have no idea. But the story is out of Louisville, Kentucky in the news one more time. Werner County, not Werner County, but Werner Co., like Werner Company Corporation, is the focus of this. It just had CO, so I'm used to seeing that as county. The maker of ladders and other products, ladder maker Werner Company, is going to close their plant in Louisville. They're going to shutter its plant in the Jeffersontown area, laying off all 118 workers by March of 2019. The Greenville, Pennsylvania-based company said in a statement Tuesday it would transfer the work to its Juarez, Mexico plant, which has excess capacity and makes similar products. So just so you know, the ladder company is going to close its plant in Kentucky and ship those jobs to Mexico just in time for all the people to buy their ladder products after they've made them and, I guess, use them to climb over the wall that Donald Trump imagines he's going to build. There was, in fact, a tweet circulating yesterday from who sent it? Border Patrol, actually. I think they thought that they were making President Trump's point about the need for increased security, but in fact they ended up trolling Donald Trump by sending around video of migrants climbing over an existing section of border wall with a ladder and lining up to do it too. So, I don't know whether they thought they scored points with that one or not, but it wasn't the one, not with me, they didn't. It wasn't the one that they thought they were making. All right, let's see. Other stories I mentioned earlier. This one, and let's get the detail on it now from ABC News. Mueller grand jury could start feeling the pinch of the government shutdown. Let's make sure that our volume is turned all the way down because I do see some auto-playing video coming up. Let's see. This one reads as follows. Members of the federal grand jury impaneled by special counsel Robert Mueller could soon see their daily stipend deferred. The first indication that his investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election may feel the impact of the longest government shutdown in United States history. Let's see. Continuing on here. That's because at the Federal District Courthouse in Washington, D.C., where the special counsel's grand jury sits, funds are increasingly scarce. Funds have been set aside for the special counsel team's work, allowing the investigation to remain largely unaffected by the shutdown. But even his high-profile probe, insulated by a permanent indefinite appropriation from the Justice Department, may soon start feeling residual side effects of the shutdown. A spokeswoman for the court said Tuesday that once the court drains its operating budget, grand jurors will continue to be summoned, but payment will be deferred until Congress and President Donald Trump, believe it or not, he's the president, reach a deal to reopen the government. Funding for the federal courts has been extended through the end of January through a multi-pronged strategy of deferring non-critical operating costs and utilizing court filing fees and other available balances, according to a statement from the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, which oversees the federal court system. No further extensions beyond February 1st will be possible, the statement said. All federal grand jurors seated for more than 40 days are paid, that's actually considerably more than I thought, $60 per day for their service. In some jurisdictions, they give you like $5 or something. The grand jurors hearing testimony in the Mueller probe were first impaneled in mid-2017, and in January, a federal judge extended their term beyond the usual limit of 18 months. The special counsel's office itself receives funding from a separate appropriation set aside for independent counsels. We read about that some weeks ago. Peter Carr, a spokesman for the special counsel's office, reiterated Tuesday that employees with the special counsel's office are considered exempt and will continue their operations in the case of a lapse in appropriations. What will happen inside the Washington, D.C. federal courthouse, on which Mueller's team relies heavily, remains a bit of a mystery. Officials there anticipate most court workers will follow the path of essential executive branch employees and be asked to work without pay after January 31st, though some could be furloughed. Federal agents not associated with the Russia investigation have been scrambling to stay afloat as the funding accounts continue to drain down. A report from the FBI Agents Association quoted an agent as saying, "On the child exploitation side, as an undercover employee, I have to put the pervs on standby. This puts children in jeopardy," which is great news for Donald Trump and his child sex perv loving friends. Well, he didn't actually add that in his comments. That was my own commentary. What an odd thing to be okay with as President of the United States. So strange. Okay. Let's see. I did mention that there were some Jared Kushner stories to get to. Definitely want to do that. Oh, a few other older stories that I guess we maybe should make mention of. Let's see. First of all, yesterday, of course, we would have seen if you had been paying attention, and I was not, the failure of both of the measures in the Senate aimed at reopening the government, both the so-called Trump compromise, though nobody knows for sure why they call it that, I guess because that makes it sound better. It was really a piece of garbage and doomed to fail. Joe Manchin loved it. He voted for it. Nobody else on the Democratic side did. I believe there were 6 Republican defections on the bill offered by the Democrats, a clean CR. Mitt Romney was among the names most prominently mentioned of the people who did exactly what Greg thought these folks would do, vote for both bills and simply say, I voted both to open the government and to build the wall. And you should have guessed right off the bat that Mitt Romney would do that, and he did. So that was interesting, and watching Donald Trump's reaction to it, equally interesting. He declared it to be a victory for his position, even though I believe he ended up getting fewer votes for his position. But neither bill passed. There was, I think, an agreement in place that 60 would be required to get the job done in lieu of having to overcome or try to overcome a filibuster of both bills. So the painless filibuster was what was implemented yesterday. And those of you, I think, who've been with us for a long time will remember, or maybe you need a refresher on what that is. That's my own terminology for when the threat of a filibuster is essentially exchanged for a unanimous consent agreement ahead of time to require 60 votes for passage of an actual piece of legislation, rather than ordinarily what happens, of course, is you filibuster a piece of legislation. If you get 60 votes, you invoke cloture on it, and then afterwards, following the elapse of the 30 hours of post-cloture debate, there is a vote held on final passage of the underlying measure, and that can pass with a simple majority once 60 votes are rounded up for cloture. And that mistakenly got turned into you need 60 votes to pass anything. You, of course, in order to actually pass a thing, to pass something, which is what you do with legislation, pass it or reject it, of course, only requires a simple majority vote. And that doesn't even necessarily mean 51 votes. It's just a simple majority of those present and voting. So yes, you can pass them with even fewer than 50 or 51 votes. Second, what requires 60 votes, of course, is to invoke cloture, as opposed to you don't pass cloture per se. You invoke cloture. That you need 60 votes for. But sometimes what they do is, instead of going through the exercise of, okay, we'll filibuster, we'll file for cloture, we'll wait a day for the cloture motion to ripen, we will have the vote on cloture, invoke cloture by 60 votes, wait for 30 hours post-cloture in order to close off debate, and then finally have our vote. We eliminate the ripening of the cloture motion and the 30 hours of post-cloture debate by saying instead, why don't we all agree that this is a filibuster and a cloture vote is what would happen here ordinarily. But to save ourselves the waste of time, why don't we agree by unanimous consent that we will vote directly on the passage of the bill, but impose the 60 vote threshold on that vote and save ourselves the time. And they can do that by unanimous consent. And they frequently do. That's the painless filibuster. And it still imposes the 60 vote threshold, but nobody has to waste their time waiting for motions to ripen and 30 hours to pass. So that's what was used yesterday, and that's what defeated the passage of either one of those bills yesterday. Just catching you up on that. By the way, speaking of weird votes that were taken and people that did strange things in their voting, Manu Raju has this, he tweeted this little bit. When was this? Is this dated? I'm sure it must be. There we are, January 22nd, so I believe that was Tuesday. House Freedom Caucus members and close Trump allies, including Meadows and Jim Jordan, among the 22 who voted against a House bill on Tuesday night, stating that it is U.S. policy to remain a member of NATO and prohibiting U.S. funds from being used for a withdrawal from the alliance. How do you like that? That's pretty amazing. And as it turns out, there were 22 members of Congress willing to say no to a bill that says, yes, we're NATO members and we're going to stay. That's pretty amazing. It looks like they're all Republicans, and people had a good time weeding through those names and finding out who they were. Let's see, we've got Allen, although I don't necessarily know all of them by last name, but Alan Amash, that's Justin Amash, right? Do I have his pronunciation right? Did I finally get that correct? He's a bit of an oddball. Biggs, Burchett, Klein, who I think is a freshman member, someone had mentioned, Scott Desjardins, the wacko wasn't he a doctor, and he was having sexual relationships with his patients and paying for their abortions, et cetera, et cetera. Good to see he's still an upstanding citizen. Fulcher, Matt Gaetz, that wacko. Louis Gohmert, that also wacko. Gosar, right? Is that Paul Gosar? Is that his first name? Griffith, Harris. It's Andy Harris, I think, from Maryland, constantly whining about various lunatic ideas, like where's my health care? Heiss of Georgia. Are there more than one Heisses? I guess so. Jordan, Massey, McClintock, Meadows, Perry, John W. Rose, Roy, Stube, S-T-E-U-B-E, Stube. I don't know how he says that. And Weber of Texas. Very interesting. I don't know. Weird bunch of wackos, but imagine going on record to vote. It shouldn't be U.S. policy to remain a member of NATO and prohibiting U.S. funds from being used for withdrawal from the alliance, as Vladimir Putin would dearly love to see us do. Okay. That, very interesting. And then we'll just hit one more story before the break that I've been waiting on. If it'll open, let's see. Here we go. Talking Points memo coming through for us once again. Josh Kovensky. Was he on the first one? I won't be able to get all the way through the story. I'll give you the headline, though. Embattled Trump Inaugural Committee. Remember them? I warned you about them. Failed to disclose key finances to IRS. Yes, one of the very few reporting requirements imposed on inaugural committees is that they, when they operate as nonprofit entities, they file with the IRS. Only it turns out, well, one, as I mentioned to you, the FEC doesn't ask anything in the way of how they disperse their money, but they still have to file their taxes with the IRS. So how would they cover up how they were secreting out the millions of dollars and probably stuffing them in their own pockets? And the answer is just lie on our IRS forms and leave everything out. President Trump's inaugural committee failed to disclose to the IRS how much money it received in ticket revenue, TPM has found. And, I think that probably is pretty important. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. It's breaking news here from CNBC, who tells us that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, says it is halting flights into New York's LaGuardia Airport, I guess all of them, due to air traffic control staffing issues. So those of you who were with us yesterday as we read into the call from the airline flight attendants union, I forget exactly how they style their union, but their president's call actually for a general strike raised a lot of interest yesterday, and there was a lot of talk, and maybe we just noticed it more because we finally were discussing it, but a lot of talk beginning to build around the idea of something along the lines of a general strike, or at least one that would begin in the aviation industry. LaGuardia, a very busy, obviously, airport in the middle of New York, and this is the sort of thing that will bring incredible pressure for a shutdown to end. And we'll see whether it succeeds or whether this thing spreads any further. I would like to see them resist for a little while longer, only in the abstract, of course, because the people are getting hurt with this. But I mean, I'd love to see the damage pile up politically for Donald Trump, but I guess I'd rather see people get back to work more than anything else. However, it really would be a hell of a situation if they began shutting down airport operations. This is going to affect everything because a lot of the planes that are, it's not just New York, obviously. Flights that are outbound from New York and supposed to be elsewhere are going to be canceled. Flights that are coming in, flights that are supposed to come in from one place and stop at LaGuardia and continue on to, say Boston, Montreal, what have you. Those things are going to be stopped. It's going to, and an airport like LaGuardia, a hub like LaGuardia, it's going to have a huge impact. I thought there was a great suggestion in the flight attendants union's president's remarks and elsewhere that a targeted slowdown in the next week or so of the Atlanta hub would make a big difference. Of course, the Super Bowl coming up, and people are going to want their Super Bowl. Imagine if all those people who paid all that money for tickets can't get to the Super Bowl. You just can't make it. There's no flights available. And if it was more of a general strike, look, you can't hire scabs to do this work because the airport's closed, because the TSA agents aren't there, and neither is the air traffic controllers. Well, we'll get down there some other way. Not if the bus drivers are on strike, not if the train operators are on strike, not if, the Teamsters join in and all this. And by the way, all of the exhibitors and vendors who also are looking to make a mint or spend a mint down in, do I have it right? Is the Super Bowl taking place in the Atlanta area? Is that wherever it is? I mean, they just ought to target that. But there's an enormous amount of economic activity that goes on around the Super Bowl. I don't think I need to tell you that. If you've ever been to the Super Bowl, and I have not, but I know people who have, and they come back, it's a week-long party. It's a huge just festival of vendors and suppliers just selling any number of how do I want to say it? It's a huge and innumerable variety of souvenirs, of course, and food and knickknacks and all kinds of stuff, and stuff that's not even necessarily related to the game, but people make a mint down there. And there's a term I would like to use, perhaps off the air, about how much to describe in generic terms exactly how much cargo has to get down there. Booths where they'll exhibit the stuff, and then of all the merchandise that they're going to sell, etc. All of that has to get there somehow, and it's almost all flown in. And if the air traffic controllers aren't working, and TSA isn't working, and pilots refuse to fly because it's unsafe as a result, then those cargo planes aren't going to go either, right? If LaGuardia is shut, that doesn't just mean that your passenger flight to Miami for a week's vacation is canceled, if anybody goes to Miami for a week's vacation anymore. That also means FedEx, UPS, all the other various carriers who these businesses would depend on to fly their goods and their booths and their personnel and all sorts of things down to Atlanta or wherever the hell they're holding the Super Bowl this year. I've paid no attention to it whatsoever. That all has to get down there. Well, now that's canceled. That big shipment that was arranged is done. All those people are going to need refunds, of course. All the passengers, of course, will need refunds as well. The airlines are going to have huge problems. They're going to need to be bailed out on this. And, who does the work on arranging the bailout? I don't know. Legislative branch is working, but ordinarily some branch of government would be helping out with designing those emergency recovery plans, but not this time. Not only because they're closed, but because this is the Trump administration, and nobody does that kind of work in the Trump administration. But so now I got to make alternative plans. Look, UPS, I have a contract with you. You got to get that stuff down there. You still have enough time to drive it down there, get off your butts and put it on a truck. Well, not if the Teamsters have anything to do with it. Maybe they want to join in this slowdown or general strike. And say, I don't know how you're going to get your booth down there. I don't know how you're going to get the 2,000 tons of T-shirts that say both teams are the Super Bowl champions, one of which is going to continue on to Guatemala at some point and be distributed down there, as you know, when they inevitably lose. But, all that stuff needs to get down there. All the hot dogs, all the hot dog rolls, all the, souvenir footballs, the bobbleheads, the the free bottles of Aleve that they give out, I don't know, at booths here and there. All that stuff has to get where it's going, and I don't know how it's going to happen if the airports are closed and the other union members are saying, we're maybe not interested in helping you do that. I don't know. It could make for a real, train wreck, I guess, and it might actually make an actual train wreck if people aren't careful in trying to stuff all this garbage onto trains and get them down there instead. It could be really crazy. This could actually be the thing that finally flips the switch and people say, all right, that's enough. I be the one responsible for this nonsense continuing. All right. Let's see. What were we in the middle of? Oh yes, right. We were reading about the inaugural committee not reporting to the IRS. Let's start that one over again from over at TPM. Embattled Trump inaugural committee failed to disclose its key finances to the IRS. So they, in filing with the IRS, would not tell the IRS or failed to disclose to the IRS how much money it received in ticket revenue. The Trump inaugural committee's failure to identify the revenue it generated from the sale of tickets and other perks broke with the practice, that's polite, of previous inaugural committees. Yeah, you think so? In doing so, the tax return that the committee filed with the IRS obscured a key metric of how it raised its record $106.7 million. Why did you have that money? We're not saying. What'd you do with it? We paid various vendors. Okay. But how did you raise that much money? It doubled the previous record for income for a inaugural committee. Regular Americans bought tickets. Well, who? How many? That's it? You don't know? You're just not saying? On their tax returns, other recent inaugural committees broke out sales revenue separately from contributions from donors. It's different. Sales of tickets to events, which often include key officials from the incoming administration, and of merchandise or other items of value were typically listed on the inaugural committee's tax return, where it asks for program service revenue. This is all a fancy way of saying other inaugural committees have told the IRS how much money they took in and from what sources, and this one has not. The Trump inaugural committee did not report any program service revenue on its tax return, effectively concealing the amount of cash generated from tickets and anything else that it sold. I can't think of a legitimate reason why one would not do that. Marcus Owens, an attorney at Loeb and Loeb, who served as director of the IRS's exempt organizations division for 10 years, told TPM. That is to say, and this is important to clear this up, Marcus Owen, a law-abiding citizen whose job it was to enforce the law for many years, says, I can't think of a legitimate reason why one would not do that, meaning why one would not break out program service revenues on its tax returns so that you could clearly delineate whose money came in and for what reason and in what amount. Now, at the same time, there's someone from the Trump organization, or, well, generically speaking, the Trump organization, maybe actually working for the Trump organization because they're siphoning money off of the nonprofit organization formed for the purposes of putting on the inaugural and stuffing it in Trump's pockets through the Trump organization. Or, more generically, various Trump organizations, including the Trump campaign, the Trump White House, and the Trump inaugural committee. But somewhere, probably in the inaugural committee, and maybe now in the White House, because that job is done and you've moved on to the White House, there's someone else who's saying the exact same thing. I can't think of a legitimate reason why one would not do that, meaning I can't think of a legitimate reason why I would not fail to report it, because the IRS's enforcement mechanisms are toothless and in the control of my boss, who got paid off in all of this. So I'm going to be more or less, in all likelihood, immune from investigation and prosecution in this. So I can't think of a good reason why I wouldn't cheat this way, is what's going on in their minds. Marcus Owens, though, being a law-abiding citizen and former law enforcement official, not really, I guess, a law enforcement official, but responsible for administering the IRS's law, says the opposite. So he continues on. Confusion by the accountant, perhaps. He's being extraordinarily kind here. Obviously, the form calls for it, so the form is not complete and accurate if it doesn't do that. So in other words, with normal people, you'd be in trouble. You'd be hearing from the IRS they'd be auditing you. You'd have to hire a lawyer or at least an accountant to help straighten this out. They basically straight up say, this is the only way you can validly file your taxes. And the Trump inaugural committee said, no, it isn't. Watch this. I'm going to file it without any of that information. And of course, you'll say as the IRS, well, that's not right. That's not acceptable. We'll demand the correct information or refer the case to law enforcement and you'll be in trouble. You'll have to go to court. You might go to jail for this. To which the inaugural committee says, I don't think you heard me about who it is I work for. I work for Donald Trump. One, he lies and cheats and steals about everything. So it's going to happen here too. And two, you idiots made him the president of the United States. He'll close you down in what used to be referred to as a New York minute, but Trump is kind of a slow-moving individual, is low energy. Plus, of course, LaGuardia Airport is closed. I don't know if the city's moving as quickly as it used to, but basically what I'm saying is my boss will fire you if you try to make a big deal. You want to make a federal case out of this? Well, then you're fired, is basically what their defense is. So, okay, screw the rest of you. We're going to lie, cheat, and steal. In a statement to TPM, the inaugural committee asserted that it had complied with all relevant regulations. Once again, this has been another episode of How to Read a Trumpster Comment, trademark David Waldman 2018, because no, it doesn't comply with all relevant regulations. But here's their mealy-mouthed excuse. Only one inaugural event had publicly available paid tickets, which was the inaugural ball at $50 per ticket, committee spokeswoman Kristen Celoro said. Many guests to this ball also received tickets free of charge or as part of donor packages. Owens, the law-abiding guy, laughed after TPM read him the inaugural committee's response. That's just incorrect, he scoffed. If you pay for a package and it includes your tickets, hotel room, transportation, a free bottle of champagne, funny hats, whatever, those are all fees for goods and are not contributions. The Wall Street Journal released a story in December saying Manhattan federal prosecutors opened a criminal probe into the inauguration's spending and into whether some of the committee's top donors had traded cash for access to the Trump administration. They have. Just thought I'd straighten things out for you a little bit. The missing data on the tax return could reveal whether lavish donation packages factored into the inauguration's record high price tag. They did. Now, by all accounts, Trump wanted his inaugural bash to be huge. It actually says that, Y-U-G-E. A November 2016 underwriter response form. That's what they call it. Underwriter response form. Listing different contribution packages shows what potential donors could receive in exchange for forking over cash to the committee. The most extravagant options available to donors giving more than $1 million included transportation, hospitality, hotel bookings, and tickets to 7 different events, not including the inauguration ceremony itself. A Boston Globe report at the time said that many top Republican donors who didn't believe Trump could win saw lavish contributions to the inaugural as a means to find a way in to the administration. But it's not clear how much the donors got in return in the form of tickets, transportation expenses, or other things of value. On the inaugural committee's tax return, that information should be logged under program service revenue, tax attorneys told TPM. Instead, it's listed as 0. Just literally 0. And there's a screenshot right here to show it. In 2013, the inaugural committee for Obama's second term logged nearly $2 million in that form of revenue in its 990 filing. That's the nonprofit organization's tax return number, the form number 990. The 2005 Bush inaugural recorded more than $12 million in program service revenue, possibly reflecting the whopping 50 inaugural balls held around Washington, D.C. at the time for delegations from each state. Differences in program service revenue between inaugurations are at least partly accounted for by what was provided to donors. An inaugural committee that offered limo rides and luxury hotel stays would have a higher number, for example. For the Trump inaugural in particular, the failure to delineate different forms of revenue obscures a key part of how it managed to raise its record $106.7 million, a number that dwarfs all previous inaugurals by at least $50 million. It also hides the value of what was given to top donors in exchange for their cash. It's difficult to overstate how much more money was raised and spent on the Trump inaugural compared to previous recent inaugurals, especially considering the relatively modest size of Trump's festivities, which was in part a reflection of his surprise victory and the sudden scramble to plan an inauguration. Obama's first inaugural committee took in $55 million in revenue. Bush's 2005 inaugural brought in revenue of $41.9 million, $54 million when adjusted for inflation, by the way, as of 2016. It would be like our inaugural raising $54 million, spending it on staff and events, and then raising the money all over again and finding a way to distribute it after all the bills have been paid, said Greg Jenkins, who ran Bush's 2005 inaugural. That's what's baffling to me. They could have raised less than what we did. And that's why it's so important, of course, to find out the value of what was being offered in exchange for cash. I mean, consider that it's Trump. One, of course, that means he's stealing. And two, that means that he's cutting corners so that he is able to steal even more. One, he's arranged it so that basically giant chunks of money are going to come to him or to his friends, and they're disguising that aptly in the 990. But in addition, wouldn't it be great if we made even more money by telling people, oh, the luxury package is for donors of $1 million or more. You're going to get hotel, limo, a free bottle of champagne, and access to a VIP area at an exclusive event, and the cabinet members are going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. All good things, but which even a corrupt inaugural committee would say, all right, well, we're definitely stealing cash through this, and we're definitely offering access in exchange for cash, but hotel, transportation, limos, free bottle of champagne, tickets to an event, we value that package at $15,000 to $25,000. Say we'll put the $25,000 ticket on it. And that's a huge ticket for it. But let's put it on there at that. And, so donate X amount of money. And for, most inaugural committees, they'd be like, all right, well, that's a $50,000 donation. $25,000 of it covers the cost of it, and $25,000 goes to other expenses of the inauguration. What Trump was doing, of course, was cutting corners. One, you stay in the Trump hotel, and that's my hotel, and I'm going to jack up the prices on you. Two, I'll give you a bottle of, whatever failed Trump brand champagne we might still have in the basement. Three, I'll get you an Uber and call it a limo. Four, I don't know how they deal with the transportation or whether they're paying for tickets. They might not, they might, hand you an economy class ticket or something, or nothing at all. They'll just say, yeah, transportation is included, and not do it, and say, what are you going to complain to the president? This is a bribe. You're going to complain that the bribe is too high? And then they value the package. They ask you for $1 million. So it's probably, $5,000 worth of actual benefits, and they put $1 million price tag on it. And the fact that they don't disclose it as program service fees just shields them from the IRS saying, wait a minute, they're reporting $50 million in program service fees. What were they giving people? They're giving them garbage. This is just a ripoff all by itself. And now they can't do that. Plus, of course, they disguise where the money is coming from and make it difficult to know who got what money on the other end. Anyway, let's continue on with just the rest of this one. It's an important story. The Trump inaugural committee told TPM that it only sold tickets to one combined event, the Liberty Ball and the Freedom Ball at the D.C. Convention Center. That sounds like two events, but I guess the word combined event is supposed to make it sound like one. The rest of the events were free, the committee said, obviating the need to disclose sales-based revenue for them. They weren't obviously free. They were ticketed events, and you didn't get a ticket unless you contributed X amount of dollars, but it was part of a package. So the ticket, this is the way they structured it. The ticket itself is a free perk that comes along with the donation that you make that, comes with the free limo or whatever. It wasn't free. They wouldn't just let anybody in. The inaugural ball was the only public event during the entirety of the inauguration where there was a cost of admission. Soloro, the inaugural committee spokeswoman, told TPM. All other public events, such as the swearing-in ceremony, parade, and welcome concert, were free of charge. Forms provided to donors show, however, that tickets were required to access other portions of the inauguration. And here a screen grab of, the menu of offerings for the 58th Presidential Inaugural Committee underwriter benefits. Let's see. There's priority booking at premier inaugural hotels. Rooms will be at your own expense, but you get priority booking. Exclusive inaugural event for $1 million plus underwriters. You and all your designees will receive the following allotment of tickets, free tickets, to a special inaugural event. There's the leadership luncheon. You get 4 tickets. An exclusive event with select cabinet appointees, House and Senate leadership to honor our most generous inaugural supporters. Tickets to official inaugural events follow. You and your designees will receive the following allotment of tickets. Vice President's dinner, 4 tickets. Ladies' luncheon, 8 tickets. Victory reception, 8 tickets. Candlelight dinner, 8 tickets. Inaugural concert and fireworks, 8 tickets. Parade, 8 VIP tickets. You could go stand in the corner for free, but if you want a nice seat. Inaugural ball, premier access, 8 tickets. Blah, blah, blah. All sorts of descriptions of who's going to be there. If you needed a ticket to get in, then it's not a contribution. It's an admittance fee. Owens, the former IRS attorney, said. Jenkins, the Bush 2005 inauguration chief, called it a head scratcher. It's thievery. Don't scratch your head. Obviously, they did sell tickets, he added. After initially reviewing the list of TPM's questions, a representative of the inaugural committee agreed to give TPM the amount of revenue generated from ticket sales. One day later, the representative reneged, declining to provide the delineated amount. So, once again, this has been another episode of How to Read a Trumpster Comment. We'll give you the revenue numbers. Actual answer, we will not give you those numbers. So, though the Mueller investigation remains a black box of information apart from its public filings, there are suggestions that investigations into the inaugural are heating up. CNN, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal have reported that prosecutors are investigating whether foreigners were able to buy influence over American policy at the event and whether money was misallocated. Inaugural committee chair and Trump confidant Thomas J. Barrack Jr. issued a statement in response saying that he was not under investigation. I guess that probably means he is. Former Manafort deputy and current Mueller witness Rick Gates was deputy chair of the inaugural, while Elliot Broidy, under investigation in his own foreign influence peddling scandal, was finance co-chair. Prosecutors, so was Michael Cohen, by the way. What's his name? Steve Wynn, right? Prosecutors from, maybe they weren't finance co-chairs of the inaugural. They were finance co-chairs of the Republican National Committee. Broidy just did both. Maybe the rest of them did too. I don't know. Prosecutors from the special counsel's office attended a recent court hearing for W. Sam Patton, a D.C. lobbyist who admitted to taking $50,000 from a Ukrainian politician to buy 4 tickets to the inaugural, directing the money through a straw purchaser to the inaugural committee. What did he want? He wanted tickets. How much did he pay? $50,000 for 4 of them. Were tickets for sale? No. You tell me. That admission came as part of an August guilty plea in D.C. federal court over failure to register as a foreign agent in a case brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office, not Mueller. House Intel Committee Chair Adam Schiff, now he's of course the chair, is probing the issue, telling TPM in a statement that allegations concerning the inauguration and its funding resurfaced early in the investigation and remain a matter of interest and concern to the committee. And so that's good. Whenever a foreign nation uses its financial wealth to violate the laws of our country, it undermines our democracy, Schiff added. When another country does so in concert with U.S. persons, it carries the additional risk of compromising them and presents a particularly acute counterintelligence risk. The reporting requirements on the inaugural committee's tax return are different from those of the FEC. According to former FEC General Counsel Larry Noble, the committee reported a total of $106.7 million in receipts to the FEC, same it reported to the IRS, so they're not cheating on that score. Part of the issue goes to how the value of tickets are calculated by nonprofits. We'll continue with this and then move on to Jared Kushner after this break. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And yes, just as we just said, just as you just heard on KITM, I'm retweeting Brandon Friedman, reminding everybody, keep in mind about airports closing. People aren't the only thing to travel through them. Goods do. Your Amazon Prime, FedEx, UPS. This isn't just about travel disruptions and inconvenience. If airports close, the economy grinds to a halt. Well, more breaking news. This just in from CNN. Air traffic is delayed not only at LaGuardia Airport in New York, but Philadelphia International Airport and Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey due to staffing issues at an FAA Regional Air Traffic Control Center. According to the FAA, how they have managed to keep Kennedy Airport operating, I do not know, but maybe just they chose one and said, we'll bring in everything we can. It's still in the air. We'll do it all through Kennedy. And after that, who knows? Also just saw a tweet from Noah Shachtman, the Daily Beast's editor-in-chief, letting us know that airspace around Washington, D.C. has been shut down entirely, per a source. And how interesting is that? Well, that hasn't happened since, 9/11. So I guess here we are, Trump's 9/11. That should make a very obvious difference to me, as I live pretty close to Dulles Airport, and it's a eerie silence that settles over the area when air traffic is grounded in the Washington, D.C. area. So hopefully you're not traveling anywhere today, I guess I should say the reality is you're not traveling anywhere today. Hopefully nothing important had to get to you and you didn't have to get anywhere either. But if you were waiting for a delivery via FedEx, UPS, what have you, you're going to find that it's probably going to get slowed down. The magic economy grinding to a halt. Well done, Donald Trump. We've got to make great deals. So we'll see how long this lasts. Everybody's predicting this as the end of the shutdown. But we'll see. Somebody else pointing out, by the way, around other things, how many inflection points has Twitter correctly predicted? Probably about 0. So, all right. We'll see. Let's return to the story of the inaugural committee because I feel good about having brought that one to your attention quite a while ago. And we'll finish up the story. Where did we leave off? I don't know. I forgot to mark it. But this is the important part here. Part of the issue with the whole story, of course, we pointed out they didn't lie about how much they took in any obvious way. That is to say, they did take care to put the same $106.7 million figure on both their IRS forms and their FEC forms. But part of the issue, those two numbers may be fake, but that's neither here nor there. Part of the issue goes to how the value of tickets are calculated by nonprofits. Typically, the full value of the ticket is considered a contribution for the purposes of the FEC. For IRS purposes, the requirements change, and probably they didn't have any people who knew that handling their paperwork, but let's see. The base market value of the ticket is meant to be reported on the tax return, Noble said, while the amount above the fair market price is a contribution. But any donations made and ticket sales should be included in the FEC form as well, Noble added. It remains unclear why the ticket sale revenue is not separated on the tax return, or what exactly that might conceal. That's an important distinction because donations represent things people did for free as gifts, while ticket sales were given in return for something. Peter Swords, a former president of the Nonprofit Coordinating Committee of New York, told TPM. Swords added that it was unclear if the issue boiled down to incompetence or malfeasance. Let's say both. At best, it's sloppy reporting, and at worst, which it is, may be hiding some transgression, he said. And if you want to know how to read that, it's hiding some transgression. What is the transgression? One day we'll find out. Want to speculate baselessly? They were stuffing money in their pockets. That's it. That's the answer. All right. Let's see. Other things to catch up on. Besides the closure of the airports and the declaration of Trump's 9/11. Let's see. What's she complaining about now? Mark Knoller covering the Sarah Sanders press conference at the White House, driveway gaggle. She asked if the same standards applied against Stone will be applied against Comey, Clapper, and Clinton. Asked if POTUS encouraged false statements by Stone, she calls it a ridiculous and insulting question. It's just not true. All right, well, no, nothing unusual in that answer. It's the usual lie. And let's see. So that's, I guess, where we are. I'm just looking for more airport news here. Oh, look, Jennifer Gunter pointing out the Super Bowl is coming up, isn't it? All this airspace closure surely is going to have some major effect beyond, of course, air traffic controllers paying mortgages and buying food. Yes, absolutely true. And like you heard here, think of all the vendors who have to get their goods down there. That's going to be a major impact on the economy. All right, let's comment on Twitter along in the middle of the show. It just makes it that much more exciting. Let's see. Think of all the vendors who have to get their merch to the game. That's going to be a hell of a situation. Okay, way to screw up the Super Bowl, Donald J. Trump. Okay, let's see. Where are we with our agenda for the day? Back to Pocket. And let's see, anything else that we left out earlier in the month, basically. I'm sort of scrolling further back for other stories that I wanted to bring to your attention and didn't. There are still more, but I don't know if any of them are more important than what I wanted to get to with Jared Kushner. All right, we'll switch gears then. Yesterday, we passed on reading the entirety of the story on Kushner, which was master negotiator or non-entity. Kushner thrusts himself into the middle of shutdown talks, which was kind of humorous. But I think we need to get to a perhaps more worrisome set of stories about Jared Kushner. And we'll go with this one from NBC News, where I grabbed it. There are plenty out there. Officials rejected Jared Kushner for top secret security clearance, but were overruled. And I think maybe the best comment on the story that I have seen so far was the one that came from Bruce McFarling, who said very generously, I thought about this story or in reaction to Maggie Haberman's tweet about the NBC story, where she, I guess, first became aware of it. He said, I would be shocked, but I listen semi-regularly to Kagro in the morning, so understood what received clearance actually meant. Yes, that's absolutely true. We went over the process by which those clearances are granted, and we went over the fact that the president can waive the whole thing, or that if somebody doesn't have security clearance, but the president wants to share classified information with them, they can as Marcy calls it, declassify it, and basically waive the requirements and give the information to the person he wants to have it. That could be Jared Kushner. He may not know that he needs to do anything. He may not need to. He can maybe do it after the fact even, which is bad practice even for a person of sound mind, but worse practice for a doddering idiot like Donald Trump. Anyway, this is the story according to NBC News. Officials rejected Jared Kushner for top secret security clearance, but were overruled. Jared Kushner was rejected for a top secret clearance by 2 career security specialists, but their supervisor overruled them and approved him, sources say. So this just basically confirms all of the conjecture we were able to put together based on reporting in the past. Laura Strickler, Ken Delanian, and Peter Alexander do the actual forensic work here on this. Jared Kushner's application for a top-secret clearance was rejected by 2 career White House security specialists after an FBI background check raised concerns about potential foreign influence on him. Can you believe it? But their supervisor overruled the recommendation and approved the clearance. 2 sources familiar with the matter told NBC News. The official, Carl Klein, that's with a C on Carl and K on Klein, is a former Pentagon employee who was installed as director of the Personnel Security Office in the Executive Office of the President in May of 2017. Kushner's was one of at least 30 cases, and you should be aware that number is ridiculous, 30 cases in which Klein overruled career security experts and approved a top secret clearance for incoming Trump officials despite unfavorable information, the 2 sources said. They said the number of rejections that were overruled was unprecedented. It had happened only once in the 3 years preceding Klein's arrival. That is a weird time span to mark, and it makes it sound like it happened only once before in the past. That's not really true. Once before in the 3 years preceding Klein's arrival, which suggests to me that, there's some bad operational security on the part of the sources. I'm guessing what that means is, and maybe I shouldn't even reveal it, is that one of the sources, if not both, have only been in the office there and been aware of office practices there for 3 years before Klein got there, which means essentially that if you're looking to identify one of the 2 people, I guess you'd be looking for someone who arrived on or around May of 2014. And they would have knowledge, of course, of the 3 years preceding Klein's arrival. And in that time, they would only have seen it once. The sources, who spoke on condition of anonymity, but didn't do a good job of it, because of the sensitive nature of the information, said the Trump White House attracted many people with untraditional backgrounds who had complicated financial and personal histories, some of which raised red flags. Other non-traditional backgrounds that you could come to this with are being a spy for Turkey, China, Saudi Arabia, or some other foreign entity, perhaps the Russian Federation. That, too, would be an untraditional background that would raise some red flags. Just thought I'd put that out there. I see what they're getting at. They hired lots of billionaires whose finances are complicated. That's true. But that just means they're too compromised to work in these positions and just shouldn't. But they do anyway. Kushner's FBI background check identified questions about his family's business, his foreign contacts, his foreign travel, and meetings he had during the campaign, which he lied about on his disclosure forms, I should add. The sources said, declining to be more specific. But I'll be more specific. They also left out the fact that his family sells green cards to Chinese, quote, investors in their residential buildings. And that's a huge compromise all by itself. Plus, of course, you'll recall the time that he asked if the Russians would provide him with secure communications equipment that would allow him to speak with Russian leadership without detection by American intelligence operatives or the intelligence community, which is an extraordinarily weird thing to ask for if you're also going to be granted top secret clearance. But who am I to raise a fuss? I've been overruled. The White House office, now this is where the process part becomes interesting. The White House office only determines eligibility for secret and top secret clearances. It sounds like a joke, but there are two different definitions. Now, as a senior official, a very senior official, Kushner was seeking an even higher designation that would grant him access to what is known as sensitive compartmented information, or SCI. That material makes up the government's most sensitive secrets, including transcripts of intercepted foreign communications, CIA source reporting, and other intelligence seemingly important for Kushner. I say seemingly important because it says it, though, right here. But they're very pointedly saying, I think, seemingly important for Kushner, because it's not entirely clear that he has the capacity to handle any of the jobs he's been handed, but he's been given them anyway because our president is a moron and doesn't see anything wrong with giving this work to another moron that's related to him by marriage. But anyway, it would seem to be important to someone whose portfolio covered the Middle East and Mexico, except that very few people's portfolios do cover such things, except the Secretary of State, who covers everything. But otherwise, there'd be no reason in the world to have anybody with both Mexico and the Middle East in their portfolio, let alone your idiot son-in-law. But that's what we have in this situation. Now, putting aside the fact that it's your son-in-law, putting in fact the fact that it's a stupid combination, putting aside the fact that the person you have assigned to the job is a moron, aside from all of that, a person who, for whatever reason, had such a portfolio, yeah, sure, they might need access to that information. So absent all the reasons not to do it, they did it. The CIA, now this is where it becomes interesting. Again, I'm sorry if I lost the train of thought here. We have the White House office. That's Carl Klein as the head of this office. And what do they call it? The Personnel Security Office of the Executive Office of the President. He's the one that oversees eligibility for secret and top secret clearances. Kushner, though, wanted even more, but he didn't get it he didn't even get to secret or top secret before they said no. And Carl Klein said, well, I overrule you. It's going to be a yes. Beyond that, he wants access to SCI. Now, that requires a determination from other officials. The CIA is the agency that decides whether to grant SCI clearance to senior White House officials after conducting a further background check. So the FBI investigates you, reports the information. The information gets to the Personnel Security Office of the Executive Office of the President. Based on that, that office determines, are you going to get your secret, top secret clearance? The answer from the the career employees is no, of course not. This guy doesn't qualify. Even in a million years, he'd never get this. And Klein says, the boss wants it. I overrule you. Then that information goes to the CIA because Kushner wants SCI clearance. They say, you didn't even make top secret clearance. You're not getting SCI. So what happens? After Klein overruled the White House security specialists and recommended Kushner for a top secret clearance, Kushner's file then went to the CIA for a ruling on SCI. After reviewing the file, can you guess what would happen? CIA officers who make clearance decisions balked. Two of the people familiar with the matter said. One called over to the White House Security Division, wondering how Kushner even got a top secret clearance, the sources said. Top secret information is defined as material that would cause, quote, exceptionally grave damage, unquote, to national security if disclosed to adversaries, which it was. The sources say the CIA has not granted Kushner clearance to review SCI material. They stuck to their guns. There wasn't a, what's his name, Carl Klein, who was there to say, no, despite the fact that you wouldn't even give this guy top secret clearance, you should also give him SCI. They were just, they couldn't believe he got top secret. Why did he get top secret? Oh, Carl Klein overruled us. Well, why did he do that? Unspoken, at the direction of the president or one of the president's aides who got that direction from the president. Obviously, there's no other reason. Well, I got to tell you, when it comes to SCI information, I'm not signing this report. There's no boss here that can make me do it. If the boss wants to sign it instead of me, that's fine, but none of us want to sign this thing. This guy shouldn't even have the clearance he has, much less be asking for this clearance. So they've stuck to their guns, but it doesn't matter. Why not? Here's why. The sources say that the CIA has not granted Kushner clearance to review SCI material. That would mean Kushner lacks the access to key intelligence unless President Donald Trump decides to override the rules, which is the president's prerogative. Why is it the president's prerogative? Because these laws were written and designed in a time when the president, if he was an insane idiot and a foreign operative, and that was clear to everybody, you would have expected him to have been impeached at that point. But we don't live in those times anymore. So it's bad because the latitude we give to the president was meant for non-insane idiots who aren't working for foreign intelligence services. But now we're stuck with it because we thought that would never happen, but now it did, and we're screwed. So that's it. It's the president's prerogative. More to the point, I guess. Really, technically, why is it the president's prerogative? Because our classification system is, a statutory construct, artificial for the most part, as most statutory constructs are. And essentially, I guess it kind of stems in a way from like unitary executive theory. That is, the president would automatically be assumed to have this clearance because for whatever reason, we decided that if we constitutionally elect a person to office, this high office, they've got to have access to all the information. We're probably not going to elect any insane idiots who are actually working for foreign intelligence services. If we do, we got bigger problems, but then we can always impeach him. But then we didn't realize that we wouldn't be able to do that because everybody in his party is also working for the same foreign intelligence service. Who could have guessed, right? So there we have it. But ordinarily, basically, all of the classification system derives from executive power. The power to classify something in the first place is an executive power. And since he holds all of that power personally, he can also say, yeah, well, in this case, no to all those rules because it all derives from my power anyway. I've delegated a lot of it to others of you because I don't have the time to check everybody's background ever on anything. I never do that. But even if I was a serious person, if I were Barack Obama, I wouldn't have the time to do that. If I'm Donald Trump, I just don't ask anybody to do it at all. Or I overrule you if you are foolish enough to do it. But usually I designate that power to you and I abide by your decisions because I trust you. Whereas here in this administration, I need to be able to reconstruct my nest of spies from Earth's Mos Eisley Trump Tower here in Washington, D.C., inside the White House. I need my people to be able to carry this SCI information out and trade it to the Saud family in exchange for cash, or the Omanis, or the Qataris, or the Emiratis, or the Turkish, or the Russians, or whoever. We need to be able to monetize this SCI, and I'm not actually energetic enough to go and do it myself. Plus, I also don't want to get caught. I want my underlings to do it. CIA says, well, we're not going to allow it. President says, well, I will. So that's where we are. It's the president's prerogative. The Washington Post reported in July of 2018, which is why we know it already, that Kushner was not given an SCI clearance. But, of course, it would be impossible for him to do his job if he didn't have it. So instead of having it, the president just gives him the information and says, blah, to hell with it. Sell it to whoever you want, is what's happening. So We've known for a long time Kushner doesn't have SCI clearance. He's doing the job anyway. The only possible conclusion is that everything was getting waived at the president's insistence. CIA spokesman Timothy Barrett said, "The CIA does not comment on individual security clearances." So that's the end of that story for now. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said the same. "We don't comment on security clearances." Sure you do. You will. As soon as it's to your advantage to do so, you will. NBC News was unable to reach Klein for comment, unsurprisingly. Kushner's lawyer, Abby Lowell, had no comment. Representative Elijah Cummings, chairman of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, said in a statement that the NBC News report raised questions he hoped to answer as part of his investigation, announced this week, into how the Trump administration has handled security clearances. So they're on it. The system is supposed to be a nonpartisan determination of an individual's fitness to hold a clearance, not an ad hoc approach that overrules career experts to give the president's family members access to our nation's most sensitive secrets, he told NBC News. Ironically, now it is that, so that's bad. "What you're reporting is what all of us feared," said Brad Moss, a lawyer who represents persons seeking security clearances. The normal line adjudicators looked at the FBI report, saw the foreign influence concerns, but were overruled by the quasi-political supervisor. Yes, we did fear this. I feared it. We all said so. The sources said that they did not know whether Klein was in communication with senior political White House officials. Of course he was. They say he overruled career bureaucrats at least 30 times, granting top-secret clearances to officials in the executive office of the president or the White House after adjudicators working for him recommended against doing so. We now need to find out who got those. The reasons for denying a clearance can include debts, he's got that, a criminal past, his dad has that, or questions about foreign entanglements, he has that. Anything in a person's background that could make them vulnerable to blackmail can be a factor. And maybe asking for secure communications equipment from the Russians would count and all that. Or maybe you would ask for that because you know you have all those other problems. Kushner's application followed the normal path for security clearance. It passed a suitability review in the White House and then went to the FBI for a background investigation. Following the FBI investigation, the case went back to the White House Office of Personnel Security, where a career adjudicator reviewed the FBI information, including questions about foreign influence and foreign business entanglements, the sources said. The Washington Post, citing current and former U.S. officials familiar with intelligence reports on the matter, reported last February that officials in at least four countries, had privately discussed ways they could manipulate Kushner by taking advantage of his complex business arrangements, financial difficulties, and lack of foreign policy experience. Among those nations discussing ways to influence Kushner to their advantage, according to the current and former officials, were the United Arab Emirates, ding, China, Israel, yes, we thought so, and Mexico, which is weird because his portfolio involves the Middle East, United Arab Emirates and Israel, and Mexico, represented here by Mexico. China is the only one out, odd man out in this one. On the basis of potential foreign influence, the adjudicator deemed Kushner's application unfavorable and handed it to a supervisor. The supervisor agreed with the unfavorable determination. Can I speak to a manager about this unfavorable determination? Sure, I'm the manager. I agree. This ought to be an unfavorable adjudication. Oh, well, can I speak to your supervisor? Well, at that point, it goes to Klein, the head of the office at the time, who overruled the unfavorable determination and approved Kushner for top-secret security clearance, the sources said. How sad. No one else gets that kind of treatment, Moss said. My clients would get body slammed if they did that. And, of course, they might get body slammed by a member of Congress. This could actually happen. Sources also told NBC News career employees of the White House office disagreed with other steps Klein took, including seizing credit checks on security clearance applicants. The sources said Klein cited a data breach at the credit reporting firm Equifax. So because there was a credit breach, we can't use that. So no more checking on people's credit to see if they have huge debts. How else will you find out? We won't. Klein is the subject of an October 2018 Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaint, by the way, viewed by NBC News. It was filed by Tricia Newbold, a current employee. Newbold has a rare form of dwarfism, and the complaint alleges Klein discriminated against her because of her height. Now, we don't have time to get into all of that, but you got all the relevant information with respect to the fact that Jared Kushner is apparently a spy and a thief, and you know it, and you're going to go to work as if it never happened. I guess that's what's going on today. We'll see whether the airline closures or airport closures affect things. Maybe by the end of the upcoming weekend, we'll have an end to this shutdown, or else it will be an S-storm of epic proportions, the likes of which have never been seen before in this country. Time now to hand the microphone over to Justice Putnam, who will bring you all the rest of the news we didn't get to today, believe it or not. There's much more on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next.
On netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, here's some of what he's got for you. The Health Department granted a South Carolina Protestant foster care agency a religious exemption license to discriminate against Jews, Catholics, and pretty much anyone. That sounds pretty damn interesting. We'll get to that and much, much more on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam next.